Welcome to Shade to Sheen, Everyday People, Extraordinary Resilience. My special guest today is Kayla Alvarez, and Kayla is a TBRI practitioner, a mental wellness life coach whose work lives at the powerful intersection of trauma, neuroscience, and child development. Kayla's authentic presence and creative spirit are contagious, bringing energy to every room she enters. What makes Kayla truly extraordinary is the transformation she's lived and the legacy she's building. In her own powerful words, my biggest achievement has been rewriting my story and creating a legacy worth leaving behind. Rooted in deep love for her family and guided by unshakable faith, Kayla has boldly faced and broken cycles of generational trauma. Her journey isn't just personal, it's generational, creating lasting change that reaches far beyond her story. Welcome, Kayla. Thank you for doing this again. We've had so many conversations off camera, but I love your story. I think it's inspirational. You are really intuitive. But my hope and my prayer is that other people find hope in your story, seeing you on the other side of some of the things that you've gone through. And then hopefully it's also cathartic to you, releasing it out into the world. I know we've spoken about you sharing your story, and so you're very comfortable, but to be recorded and doing it,
I know.
It can be a different experience.
It definitely is. I have never been recorded sharing my story out there. And there's always some hesitation, I think, when you have experienced hard things and you're like, well, my hard thing might not be as hard as that other person. It's not a reason not to share because it could impact. You don't know who.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I like what you said about you and thinking about other people's story, and it's not as hard as other people. And Brene Brown, I love her, but what she calls that is comparative suffering. And so for us to not get into comparing our suffering to other people, because we're able to hold space no matter the story. And she was like, our empathy and our sympathy are not finite. I can hold space for someone whose pet passed away and someone who is battling cancer. Right. I can do both. Are. So I really love that. Right. So let's get into it. For my interviews, I like to start at the beginning. Okay. So I want to start from when you were a little girl. So going back to Michigan? Yeah. Is it Michigan? Okay. So can you tell me where you grew up, even though I just said Michigan? Can you tell me where you grew up and what your home life was like?
Yeah. So I grew up in Novi, Michigan. Novi, yeah. So it's a little suburban town. It's right 20 minutes out from Detroit, 5 minutes from Ann Arbor. So
it's right outside the city.
Yeah. So, it's not right outside the city. 20 minutes makes a difference when you're driving, from Detroit to where I live. Okay. So it was very suburban, very Caucasian and Indian and Asian. And those were the people that I grew up around. So, I lived in a 2-family household, my mom and my stepdad, which I found out at an earlier age that he wasn't my real dad. And so we'll get into that later. But my childhood as I remember it was just when I take myself back there, it felt very carefree and we lived in a pretty safe neighborhood. So we would be out riding our bikes and, we would go on camping trips and we did our best to work through our dysfunction. I grew up with the oldest of 4. So I had 3 younger siblings.
I just thought you had a sister.
No, I have 2 younger brothers and a younger sister.
I feel shame. We have known each other too long for me not to know that you had other siblings other than your sister. I know. Who was pregnant, right? Colorado?
Yeah.
I thought that was...
That's okay.
Oh, man. Okay.
It's all right. We're learning new things about each other.
I'm like, okay.
Yeah. So I grew up the oldest of 4. So, there's a lot of responsibility on me, with them. But I love them to death. Protected. I was their protector. And then, we went on the camping trips and we did all the things. And then as we got older, we kind of started to see the dysfunction kind of uncover. So I'm not sure if you want me to go into that right now or not, but
there is no schedule outlined, so we could get into it. But something that I want to ask you about before we go to the next topic is, you said that you were their protector. What did that mean?
Yeah,
What does that mean?
It felt very maternal for me in a very weird way. I felt like because of the chaos that we were growing up in, it felt like I was responsible to care for them and just be there for them. And I also, growing up, because of everything, because of just my childhood, I had a lot of sort of anger. So a lot of that anger would be projected into a tough girl personality. And so because I had this like tough girl persona, I was like, if you mess with my sibling, was like, and also my mom, she was like, nah about it. If there was somebody bullying my sibling, she's like, I can't go handle it. You go handle it. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to school. Like, not only like physically protective, but also just like protective of like their spirit and their just, I felt very, very protective over them.
Oh, okay. So I know it wasn't, you said until you got a little bit older where you started to realize the chaos, but then you mentioned you had some built up anger. What was going on there?
So as I started getting older, I started kind of realizing I had learned, my memory's kind of in and out, but I feel like I was around 10 or between 10 and 12 maybe, when I found out that my stepdad wasn't my real dad. So that was a really weird time for me because I felt like obviously very confused. The person who, my stepdad was there with my mom, I believe, when I was in the womb. So it felt just like he was supposed to be there. And I still feel that way. But the idea that there was somebody out there that wasn't interested in being in my life was very hard for me. So that kind of started developing some insecurities and just like that became an inward experience for me. Like, what's wrong with me? Why doesn't he want to be in my life? And as I got into my teenage years, that kind of progressively got worse. And then as I started getting older, I started realizing really like, my father was an alcoholic. So these childhood memories were sometimes tainted by his...
And you're talking about your real father or stepfather?
My stepfather.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
Your
my stepfather.
Okay.
Yeah, so he, we would go camping and he would be like belligerently drunk and like that kind of overtook a lot of the memories that we started to have. So anything that involved him, it was just, he's drinking, oh, we're late because he has to make his drink before he leaves. And like just everything that had to do with him was just kind of like, oh, And so I started to kind of peep how his relationship was with my mom and like, I didn't really realize it until I was older, but my mom was dealing with a lot of trauma of her own, and so a lot of her anger towards us was usually physical, so if we did something wrong, there was physical discipline, but it felt like rage, like it was like rage when she would discipline us. So I felt like there was some of that trauma that was coming out while she was disciplining us. And so, that's also something that as I started getting older was coming into play as well. So my relationship with my mom started kind of to deteriorate. As her mental health declined, our relationship declined, obviously, because of the way that I was making meaning of our relationship. It didn't really feel supportive. In those formative years, I didn't really have someone to lean on and talk to about things and talk to about my identity and like, everything felt like I was going to get in trouble for. So it was very just like a shell, like just going to keep this to myself because if I lie, at least there's a 50% chance I won't get a whooping, so it kind of became
kind of avoiding that.
Correct.
Avoiding punishment.
Correct. Yeah. And it was, also very unpredictable, right? So when she would pull up in the driveway, I would get like knots in my stomach and I'm like, oh my gosh, like what version of my mom am I going to like experience today? When she walks through the door, like who's going to get it? Who's going to, so that's another reason why I felt really protective over my siblings as well, because, I couldn't necessarily do anything about it when I was younger, but it just
You're
felt...
a child yourself?
Yeah.
Like you would rather stand in their place almost, rather than for her to take out her frustration on them.
Mm-hmm. As I've gotten older and I've been able to really conceptualize like everything that has happened and what meaning I have made of my experiences. When I start talking about it, it becomes this like the web of like, and this and this and this and this, so it's easy to get lost in it. So I will take any questions that you have.
I'm curious, when you talk back, it sounds like a lot of stuff really, like you became aware of a lot when they let you know. that your stepdad wasn't your dad.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how that happened? Like, did they sit you down?
Yeah.
Do you feel like they were supportive? Did they answer questions?
Yeah.
Because that really does seem like where things started to come to light and you were like aware of your own consciousness and like what started to go on around you.
So,
Conversation.
if my memory serves me correctly, I remember playing outside with my siblings, and my mom and my stepdad, they had asked me to come inside separately. And so I came inside, and I don't remember the exact conversation really. I just remember it being like a sit down conversation.
Okay.
And it was basically like, we just want to let you know, whatever, he's not your real dad, and your dad lives in Puerto Rico. And I don't remember the ins and outs of it because I was just like, what? Like, that's wild. This is the only dad I've ever known. So,
Because you were like 10 or 11. Do you know why they chose to tell you when they did?
I have no idea. And I think like the weirdest thing is that it felt like there wasn't really any like follow up conversations about it from what I remember.
Yes.
So it was just kind of like, here's, we're dropping this bomb on you. And it felt like, okay, now what? What do I do with this information? I remember I just like went back outside and started playing. Like, it didn't really faze me or hit me at the time. Didn't really start coming out until I was a little older, like into my teenage years. But it was just kind of like, oh, this is weird. And then after that, I was just kind of self-conscious about like, okay, like, am I different from everybody else?
It's interesting. You did mention that you started to internalize it, which is always so interesting because I know parents, and we talk about how we'll say things like, or I'll hear it in movies and hear other people say, like, it had nothing to do with you. But as a child, we still end up internalizing.
Yeah.
Do you feel like if they would have had a follow-up conversation and added more context, more information, do you feel like that would have helped you not internalize it?
I was actually thinking about that on the way here.
Okay.
Because I was just kind of running through everything. And I feel like had I had more support afterwards, I feel like I probably would have had a different experience. Okay. Maybe if there would have been some follow-up conversations about, and maybe it did happen, but it just wasn't emphasized enough for me to remember. But just more conversation around like, yeah, this is what happened. And I'd like to, that would have made a difference, but I don't know if it would have.
And allowing us questions maybe, because you did talk about how you didn't feel supported.
Yeah.
So I would imagine you probably had a lot of questions, but you also felt like, I don't know if this is going to aggravate her, your mom. I don't know what this is going to do. So then you feel like you couldn't ask questions. Yeah. Kids have a lot of questions. We got kids, so they have a bajillion questions. And if they don't come out right then, they're going to come out before bedtime.
Right. I don't necessarily, I mean, because my mom and I didn't really have that type of relationship, I didn't really feel like safe enough, I guess, to ask those questions or to explore that more.
Right.
And I also feel like I was in a space where it didn't really impact me in that moment. So I didn't really have questions.
Yeah.
Just like, oh, okay.
Right.
And then I went along my merry way. And after that, it just kind of, for me, became a thing of like, oh, this is just what it is, and that's it.
All the while you were internalizing.
Yeah. Like, now in hindsight, looking back, I see how it did affect me. But, when I was in it, it was very much like, okay, well, this is just what it is. So
I have a question. So I was recently listening to Brene Brown, a podcast, and she had Mark Brackett on her show. And Mark has done a lot of research, but he said one of the things he's found in his research is that 2/3 of the nation's youth don't feel like they have a supportive adult in their school. I know you didn't have someone you felt like was supportive at home, but did you have anyone in another circle at school, another family member who you feel like you could have gone to or that you went to? Because I think 2/3 is a lot.
It's a lot. That's a wild statistic.
Right.
And I don't necessarily remember having anyone in school besides my 4th grade teacher, who I'll never forget. Although I did forget her name, but I don't forget how she made me feel.
That's right. We will forget what people say, but not how they made us feel. I don't know who said that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my 4th grade teacher, she was like so just like, again, maternal. It felt like very like safe and like she cared about us, So I don't ever remember really having like deep conversations with her or anything like that. It was just like an aura of the classroom just felt safe. I did have my aunt and uncle there. So when we moved to Michigan, we were the only one of my family to move to Michigan. So we really had no family.
Where were you before?
So we had moved, we were kind of bouncing around. So I was born in New York,
Okay.
and then we lived there for a little bit, and then we lived in Miami for a couple months or something. Then we moved to Detroit.
Okay.
Then we moved to Novi.
Okay.
So it was kind of like, all over the place. But yeah, so that was nice because I had like a cousin that was around my age, and then like my brother had his boy cousin who was around his age, and then my sister had like a girl cousin that was around her age. So it was kind of like my poor little brother didn't have anybody, but but it was kind of this unspoken like, it is what it is, so you're in your situation and there's really nothing that we can do about it.
Did your aunt and uncle know about the physical abuse going on and the alcoholism?
Yeah.
Oh, they did?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. It would happen, it could happen right in front of their faces.
Okay.
But, that was really normalized in our family. It was normal to beat the crap out of your kid. Like,
okay.
It was just normal, so I didn't really feel like I could run to anybody or I could confide in someone, I really only felt that about my aunt because she was very caring for me and I felt that. And so she would be the one that would be like, I'm so sorry. There was that one aunt that was like soft and kind and caring, and I felt seen and like,
we gotta love those people, right? So you did have like your aunt.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your fourth grade teacher.
Yeah. I never opened up to anybody. I was just like very inward, just like, I'm just gonna keep this to myself. Like, not gonna talk to people about how I feel. Like, it was just,
this is what it is. This is our life, and it's normalized.
Yeah.
I would imagine this is normal, but there was also a sense of this is not right. Did you understand that?
Yeah. I would say that I knew. I've always been pretty intuitive, and so I knew like, this is not okay. Like, it's not normal, even though it's normal for us. Like, it was very easy and, early for me to put a finger on it and be like, this is dysfunction. Like, this is not how it's supposed to be. And I think there was an aspect of it of like what I was hoping for and like what I wish my family would look like. And like, I know that it's not this. I don't know what it is, but it's not this.
Got it.
So there was also that kind of playing in the background as well. Like, it's not this.
It ain't it.
This ain't it, but I don't know what is. But I know it ain't this.
Okay. So having that experience, now looking back, how do you feel like that has shaped who you are as an adult?
It's really funny because I feel like I'm learning so much about myself, my true self.
Who's that? What does that mean? Your true self.
All of my life has felt like I've worn a mask. And so I've put this mask on to like fit in or feel like I belong or, excel in this and try to find my worth in all these things. I put this mask on. And so into my adulthood, when I'm doing therapy and when I'm, really speaking about my experiences and getting clarity around it, I've been able to really take my mask off. And it's like, okay, I'm not this, tough girl persona. Like, I'm not that, I'm not this extrovert that's just like this wild thing. I'm very much an introvert, and, situations and people sometimes drain me, and I'm not really confrontational. Whereas all of my life, I've put on this, it's almost like this armor of protection. Like, I'm going to hurt you before you hurt me. I'm going to make sure that I'm not getting too close for you, right? So like, there's all these defense mechanisms that I had like growing up that I thought were my identity. I thought that I was this,
You thought the defense mechanisms were your identity.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That is like, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm like letting that sink in, just the thought of, wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
An incredible insight.
Yeah.
But I've never heard it said that way. It's like the things that you were doing as a defense to protect yourself, you thought that's who you were.
And so it's like I'm getting to know this new version of myself. And there's so many parts of me that I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this. Like, I don't know. I'm working on getting to know her, but it's a little weird, awkward.
What led to you and your self-discovery? So a lot has been happening throughout your life, but at some point you said, I want to see a therapist, or this ain't it.
Yeah.
When did that happen?
Yeah.
When did you make a conscious decision to say, I want to do something different? What led to that?
So I was very much in my young adulthood. I was almost like maybe 27, maybe.
Okay.
So for what it stemmed from, it sounds really weird, and I'll back up in a little bit. But it was a breakup that was kind of like a breaking point for me.
Yeah, it'll do it.
Yeah.
These
So
I'm just kidding.
So, just kind of fast forwarding through like my teenage years and because of that rocky relationship with my mom and not having that safe place and not really feeling like I belong in my house. And, I was very driven by, achievements. And so I'm like, I'm going to work, I work 2 jobs and I'm going to buy my stuff. And I felt like very independent, and my parents really instilled that in me. It's like, work hard for what you want. Like, you have to earn it. So I got kind of caught in that loop of like, okay, I'm only good if I'm getting a promotion, and I'm only good if I'm, achieving things, if I'm, making my mom proud by, something that, like, because that was the only time that I felt like she spoke highly of me, was when I was achieving at something. And so then I linked that to my worth.
Your worth.
And so I was like, all right, I'm going to work these 2 jobs. All right. I pitched in money for my first car, and like that felt really big for me. And as I'm going through life, I'm like, okay, well, I'm doing all that I need to do to like be a grown up. Well, I had no business thinking this way because I'm like literally 17 or whatever. But I'm like, okay, like I'm not out here being wild. I'm not like, I'm working really hard. I got 2 jobs. I'm in school. I'm doing what I need to do. In my mind, what felt like it wasn't complete for me was a relationship. Like, I just need my relationship, and then I'm just complete. I'm good.
You're good.
Right?
That's
so
missing piece.
like for me, when I was that young, thinking about what is it to be an adult, it's like, okay, you work and you have your spouse or your boyfriend or whatever, and you do what you need to do. You have your life. And that was what I was chasing so badly, was like, I want to have a life outside of this. I want to go. I want to like be separate from all of this. And so because of that mindset, I kind of got caught into this like serial monogamy, where I was like in a relationship for like 2 years, and then it would, after 2 years, that was like my mark. And then I would be like, walk away. And then, 6 months later, I'm like in a new relationship. I'm like, we're together for 2 years or a year, some long-term, number. And so that kind of happened 1 or 2 times. And so it ended up kind of becoming this cycle. And as I got older, and after having a child, even when I had my child, I was still very immature. And so I had gotten pregnant and it didn't work out with her father. And so I had an opportunity to move to Florida. I was in Michigan, and I took that opportunity. I came here when she was 3 months old, and it still didn't click for me. Like, I guess maturity and like really taking care of my responsibilities, and like, for me, I was just still trying to find that person that would like complete me.
Okay.
Right. So like this. And then when I came down here, and this world was like, Florida was like so cool. It was different from Michigan. And
Was
when I had come down here in 2015. Okay, yeah.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've been here for a couple.
I'm like, oh.
But when I moved down here, I was like, my world is like expanded. And so I felt like I had kind of regressed a little bit with my behavior, where I was like tapping into my 20s again. No, I was still 20, but my young 20s, like going out and like staying out till 5 a.m. And I have my mother, who I love dearly, and she has been a big support. And, coming into my adulthood, we've gotten closer, but she really did support me with my now oldest. But I was just living it up, and I would come home at 5 a.m. and the baby would wake up at 6, and I'd be like feeding her some breakfast, like crazy. But again, I'd gotten into a relationship, and it ended up ending similarly to my last one, where it was like it came back down to like, I'm not good enough because it didn't work out, because they were looking elsewhere, because they had their own flaws. It became inward for me for a little bit. And so it felt really, really heavy the last time that I had been in a long-term relationship, and I was expecting it to be like, this is it for me. Like, not that I ever really pictured ever getting married, but I thought that's just what you had to do. And it was just a very supernatural experience after that breakup. And I think that, to answer your question, a million years later, sorry, to answer your question, that at that point, it felt spiritual. It felt, the shift felt spiritual. That was the turning point for me to start working on my self-development and working on learning different things like CBT and all of these different forms of therapy and watching motivational speakers. And it felt like it was very cold turkey for me. It was so weird.
Okay, I want to know more.
I don't know.
'Cause I'm like,
so weird. Weird.
I'm like spiritual. Like, what does that mean?
I know. It's so weird. It's so weird.
What does that mean? What, like, please describe what that experience was like, because you said you had been in relationships before, they had ended, it was cyclical.
Yeah.
And then this one happened.
Yeah.
In Florida. After
Yeah.
moving with your 3-month-old.
Yeah.
Tell me about why it was spiritual.
Sometimes you don't know the time. Like, why was that the time that wanted to speak to me? But maybe he had been trying to talk to me and I was just doing my own thing. But nobody ever taught me how to have a personal relationship with God and, like, who Jesus was and the magnitude of the love that he has for us. That was never communicated to me. It was crazy. Yeah, it was so crazy. And up until that point, I hadn't really, like, gone to church or, I was very disconnected.
From God.
Yeah.
So you're just like, wow, ton of bricks.
Yep. So it was a huge, huge part and turning point of my life where everything changed for the better. Like, instantly, in the drop of a dime. Like, only God can restore.
What did that look like, and what did that feel like when you then started to come into knowing God personally in your spirit? Because you just said he changed my spirit. Yeah. What was that transformation like?
Before this experience, felt like I went through life feeling like the great value version of a person. Like the Dollar Tree. I'm for real.
I'm not laughing at you. I'm just, when you said great value, my mind was thinking about something. I'm like,
I mean, they had some great products. They have some great products, I'm telling you.
When you said great, I thought you were going to follow up with a different word.
Girl,
and then you said value. I was like, what's great? And I'm like, what?
I definitely felt like a step below everything and everyone.
Okay.
Even in school, like, I would look at my classmates and I'm like, I'm a step below you all.
I'm not good enough.
Yeah. I am not, like, just everything, my life, myself, everything. And so I felt dirty. That is, like, the best way to describe it. I felt dirty. And so I went through life feeling dirty, and I didn't feel good unless I was achieving or unless I was, manipulating or, like, whatever it is that I felt was necessary at the time, whatever. But yeah, to put it plainly, like, I just felt dirty.
Did you, like, start going to church? Like, what happened? Like, how did this transformation happen? How did you know it was God?
I know it wasn't me. And I did believe in, like, this higher power, but it was like there was just, like, no doubt in my mind. It was just like, it was God.
Okay.
All right. I'm doing it wrong. So it was a choice that I made in that moment to have faith and trust and believe. I felt like he was saying to me, like, what you're doing is not working. Like, let me lead the way for you. Let me show you the way. And I felt peace in that. And because I had felt this peace that I've never really felt before, I knew it was God because it was like supernatural peace. And so after that, I was like, I don't know how to do better. And so I'm kind of an extremist sometimes, or I was an extremist where it's like, it's hot or cold for me. And that helped me kind of put guidelines around what I needed to do. So for me in that moment, I was like, okay, I know what not to do. I don't know how to do better, but I'm just going to not do that.
Fair.
So anything that I would normally do, I consciously made the decision to do the opposite of that. That went down to, conversating with friends. If I usually gossip with that person, I was consciously not gossiping. If I saw somebody at my job that I was attracted to and they made the first move, I would consciously tell them, like, I'm not emotionally available. I wouldn't take their number. I wouldn't, like, usually I'd be like, oh, okay, like, that's fine. Let's talk a little bit, But I was so set in my way that I was like, everything that is this what it usually was? I'm gonna just do the opposite, like quite literally the opposite of everything.
Wow.
And that was the only way that it made
Excuse
sense
me.
for me to change.
Right.
Because doing the opposite until I started to see the results. And so like I started looking for churches and just kind of exploring that and just really focusing on my mental health and my personal development and learning about myself and working out and taking care of myself and really just giving myself the time I had never given myself. Giving myself that time to care and support and show up for my daughter the way that she deserved. And it really just became about her and I and her and I and God. And I'm like, we're the three amigos and we are just focusing on ourselves. We are going to, because I was tired of experiencing the same old into my adulthood. So the Lord really just like stepped in. He just kind of he cleaned house. And I'm so grateful he did. Honestly, my life has not been the same since.
What were some of the messages that God told you about yourself?
Definitely learning more about Jesus and his role in all of our lives. And, our sins are forgiven from the east to the west. Really starting to learn about he loves me unconditionally. Even if I think I'm dirty, he still loves me. And because, I'm walking with him, he's washed me clean. And those are the things that I was holding on to, is that he has washed me clean. I'm a new creation in him. And so, those scriptures that support that, those were like my anchor. Like, I'm washed clean. I'm renewing my mind. I don't have to be the same person that I was. I don't identify with the person that I was before. That person was in survival and I'm in the spirit. It was a completely different experience for me. Completely different.
Did your relationship, when he started working in your heart, I would imagine things from your past started to come up as well. And now you mentioned you do have a relationship. And so once God started to speak to your heart, how did those other things come up from your past so that you can heal and address those?
Yeah, I definitely feel like it was a combination of learning about trauma and the spiritual side of it as well. And nobody's exempt. God doesn't exempt anybody. Everybody is included in that. And that included my mom, and that included my real dad, and that included my stepdad, and all of these things. He loves them all the same. And then the understanding trauma portion of it, their actions, I was able to heal because I was able to understand that their actions were a result of the trauma that they've endured. And that was a generational curse that had been over our family that was, trying to repeat itself. And so when I started learning about generational traumas and when I started learning about trauma in general, really, and mental health and how that had an impact on the way that my mother could show up for us and the situations that she had endured behind closed doors with my stepdad. And it was easy for me to forgive her because I understood. And so for me, it was I don't justify her actions, but I understand them. And that brought healing to me because, everybody makes mistakes. I don't show up for my daughters the way that I want to 24/7. And so having that, I don't justify it, but I do understand it. And I'm able to forgive because of that, because, now that I know about being in survival mode and now that I know about neuroscience and how that plays an impact, how that plays a role in the way that people show up for themselves and others, I have understanding beyond belief. So, learning about epigenetics.
Oh, yeah.
All of these fun things, it makes it really easy for me to kind of unpack that. And there's a lot of compassion there and a lot of healing. And, I think it was like a marriage of the two, spiritual and that neuroscience part as well, bringing those two together.
I love that because you are a compassionate person, but you are also very non-judgmental. I feel like sometimes some people can appear that they forgot where they have come from, but I don't get that with you. I've heard you say that before, we all make mistakes. And I really love that because I feel like that's how Christ is. There is healing here. There is compassion here. There is understanding here. There is listening here.
Right.
I definitely get that when I talk to you.
Thank you.
So I really love that. That's something that I really, really like about you, and why we drive so much together. Because it's well, I can talk to you and I can say random things that I probably wouldn't say to anybody else.
Yeah.
other than maybe my husband and Jesus, you know, but I can't like say it together. Like, she's not going to judge me. She's going to be like,
Definitely
I get it.
not.
I really do love that about you. Do you feel like that's because just your upbringing, that's just from your past, you're able to have, you bring that compassion in when you're meeting other individuals?
Yeah, I mean, because I have witnessed different, family members endure really hard things, and because I have endured hard things myself, and in all of the experiences that I've experienced, it is easy for me to be a container. Not, I wouldn't say easy, but it's just like it comes naturally for me to be a container for others. Girl, we just trying to make it out here. So we are trying to make it. And sometimes it doesn't come out the way that we anticipate it. And that's okay. And we make mistakes, and we say things we don't mean to say, and we do things we don't always mean to do. And as long as that person has some awareness around that, they have some awareness around the mistake, I'm going to embrace with open arms, because that's who we're called to be.
How would you encourage someone who feels dirty, who is like, this ain't it, but I have no idea what to do. I don't have support.
Yeah.
And I'm drowning.
Yeah.
I am drowning, and I don't like me, right? Like, I don't like being with myself. What would be a good first step?
I think the first thing that I would say is that there's a God out there that loves you and cherishes you and looks at you like you are their prized possession. And there's nothing that you could do that could change the heart of the God that we serve. And when you feel like you don't have anyone, and you don't feel like you have the resources or the capacity, it doesn't take much to surrender your life to the Lord and ask for help, because He will come and He will help. And there's, supernatural experiences that can happen, and that have happened to me personally, that can change the trajectory of your life. That's like the first and most important thing. That in itself can change all. My second thing would be find community. Find community. Get on Facebook, go to some groups, see where you can fit in and find your people. And it might be hard, because I went through life feeling like I didn't have any people until I was much older, and I could probably count on one hand how many of my people I have. But it's all good. Quality over quantity. So finding community, though, it's so important. What we've learned about trauma and TBRI, that connection piece and that relationship piece is so important.
It's so healing.
Yes.
Even if it's not the person who you feel like has harmed you, has caused you a lot of pain, being in connection with another person who is secure, who is healthy, who is safe, can bring nourishment and healing.
Absolutely.
That you needed when you were that young child.
Absolutely.
Like being seen and being heard.
That's so true. I mean, I can attest to that. Like, I don't really feel like I moved into having like a secure attachment until I met my husband. And he was that person for me that helped me move from, being avoidant and not really trusting in relationships and not really showing my true self. Like, he was that rock that helped me, really shine and come out and feel seen and appreciated and heard and loved. And
that's so healing.
It is. And you don't always find that in a relationship. You could find that with friendships. You can find that with, when you get in community, you find those people, and it's so healing.
Absolutely. Yep.
You're able to like you said, go heal those parts of your childhood that be the person that you needed when you were younger.
Yes. I think my healing journey, some of the attachment and that connection and that healing happened through one of my best friends, and we have been friends for a long time now. She actually she's a LCSW, but similarly, a place of non-judgment. Is where the healing started, and it continued with my husband, right? You see someone you feel like, tell me if you agree, you can't hide from your spouse for too long. You can only have your mask on for so long until you're like, okay, you got to see my crazy side. But then to show that, you're like, here's my ugly self.
Yeah.
It wasn't that girl. Sorry. Surprise. This is her. And for them to love you anyway
Yeah.
is incredible. That first time where you feel like you really have hurt them or done something in your relationship where you're like, oh Lord, this is bad. I still love you.
Yeah.
And they cherish you and nurture you and see you despite of your foolishness is so healing, because I'm sure you feel like, for me, let me not speak for you, like sometimes in those moments in my early years of marriage, I feel like, not that he ever said he would leave, but you just feel like I am so unworthy that he's not going to put up with this.
Right.
I'm not worth it. And then when they prove you wrong, you're like, wow, you really do love me.
Right.
Sir. But that's so healing to our spirit.
And there's so much, there's so much data to back that. There's so much research to back that. So it's like,
but they have to be safe and healthy themselves.
Yes.
Not perfect.
Right.
But like be rooted and grounded and safe psychologically and spiritually and emotionally. It's just not anybody.
Right.
But it is so healing. So you agree with that, like finding your community, and I agree, it does not have to be a spouse. It can be a friend.
Right.
I am a testament to that. One of my girls.
It's beautiful. It's like a really beautiful thing.
It is. I feel the same way about you though. I feel like I call you and tell you some foolishness and you.
Well, I feel the same way about you too.
It's like you wouldn't.
People are out there.
Judge.
Gems are out there.
Thank you, Kayla. This has been incredible. Girl, we can go on for hours upon hours.
Really, I feel like I've covered everything that I wanted to cover. The only thing we didn't talk about, which is it's motherhood, but girl, we can talk about that another day because
the episode.
We're going to have a part 2 because motherhood is a whole piece of its own. So
yes,
that was another part of my life that was just so, but even in that, there's so much doubt and insecurity and, that feeling of going back to feeling dirty and not worthy and all of these things, right, that come up again. Same thing is true, that community and God, really.
Thank you so much, friend. Thank you. Truly, seriously. Thank you.
Great.